ESG, my audience knows all about that. We've been talking about that for a long time now in deep detail. Let's talk about this NAC, Natural Asset Company. What is it? Like, just break that down for us.
Yeah, so the Natural Asset Company is a company that would be traded on the New York Stock Exchange and raise money globally from investors just like any other company. But importantly, it's not based on economic activity, and that's why the New York Stock Exchange had to apply to the Securities and Exchange Commission to get a rule to change its manual and use a different accounting standard than the ones that we use in the United States, basically GAAP. And GAAP is based on economic activity. It's very objective, and the money going in and out of a company, it's fairly easy to track. What makes the Natural Asset Company unique is that these companies are designed to manage ecosystem services and to maximize ecosystem services. So I basically explain it as the financialization of Mother Nature. And so what is photosynthesis worth? And because it's basically creating a value out of thin air, that's why these are not GAAP type of accounting standards that we're looking at. We're now looking at United Nations accounting standards that are applying an arbitrary value to basically natural processes that all of us benefit from.
I want to understand the new way they're assigning value, but let's just talk about the natural processes for a minute. So I think mainly we're talking about sort of like carbon sequestration, right? Pulling carbon out of the air, things like that. But potentially even, I don't know if this includes minerals, water, fossil fuels, et cetera. But what are you talking about this natural synthesis?
Yeah, so it's really trying to manage, the Natural Asset Company is really trying to segregate the land itself from the natural processes that happen on that land. So things like flood prevention with the way land is contoured, or the types of plants that are on the land that prevent soil erosion or floods from happening. It's how much the soil absorbs carbon, how much carbon does the soil absorb. Things like photosynthesis, I mentioned, the converting carbon dioxide into oxygen. It's managing those processes and trying to maximize the good of Mother Nature and applying a value to that. That's really what the Natural Asset Company is trying to do. It's not trying to hold land to hold land like you and I might think of as a land investment and turn around and sell it for a higher profit. It's actually trying to manage the natural processes on land in a sustainable way, which means no unsustainable activity can take place on that land, which means things like grazing, mineral extraction, forestry, oil extraction, the things that are happening on federal lands today or on other private land. If it were to come under the ownership of a natural asset company, the purpose of the land changes from trying to generate economic activity to trying to shut down economic activity.
So already we have that, not this, but for example, you mentioned mineral extraction. So in parts of the country, Texas, for example, someone may own the minerals under the ground. You own the land and you can build something there, but somebody may own the minerals under that. In California, the aquifers, right, the water rights are all kind of divvied up, et cetera. So we sort of have that in a sense, but you still get use of the land. It's just maybe what's under the land is owned. But you're saying with this, it's different, where now they take over the land and every activity that happens either on or under the land as well, basically taking it out of service.
Yes, and so you can take land. So the federal government has all this land in the West, for example. If they put that into or under the management of a natural asset company, then the federal government still owns the land, but it's now managed for a completely different purpose. Same thing with conservation easements. Conservation easements are much more prevalent, I would say, east of the Rockies. But those conservation easements could be enrolled in a natural asset company, and further prevent economic activity happening on the land that is encumbered with the conservation easement.
So the federal government won't actually sell the land to a private corporation. They basically just give the rights to the private corporation to then control the land over probably
Correct.
a very long period of time, which is sort of a semi-quasi way of making it private.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right, because this is where you get into constitutional issues with federal land. The BLM, for example, is operating under the 1976 law that essentially allowed them to manage lands, federal lands, for multiple uses. So all of that economic activity. And do they have the right to assign a conservation lease, which essentially takes precedence over the multiple use leases, the grazing and the mineral extraction, et cetera? Do they really have the ability to do that, or is that something that Congress has the right to do? I think that's a constitutional question that certainly is in the fore now.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned BLM in California. We have lots of BLM. In Texas, you have no BLM. It's interesting. But we have lots of national parks that you can't really do anything in. I'm a dirt bike guy, so I kind of follow what happens with the deserts, and we've lost a lot of them in California. Can't go ride dirt bikes out there anymore. But we have lots of national parks that we really can't do anything with, and those are being conserved, and I think I kind of like that. I mean, is it sort of just like that? I mean, they just take the national parks, or you're afraid that this could potentially creep into now taking over a lot more land that could be a big problem?
Yeah, it's definitely the latter, where this is part of a bigger agenda. The America the Beautiful is what the Biden administration calls it. It's basically 30 by 30, the 30 by 30 agenda. So 30% of the land and water in the United States being preserved by 2030, and it has to be basically to the level of a national park or wildlife refuge. And so we're seeing, for example, in Montana, 5.8 million acres, the Missouri Headwaters designation, that the Fish and Wildlife is trying to get this land designated as a wildlife refuge. 5.8 million acres. 500,000 of those acres are state land. They didn't even tell the state of Montana before they announced it. 250,000 acres of private conservation easement land and other private land within this designated area. And so even a private landowner, it's not that they're going to come in and say, hey, we're taking your land, but they may stop servicing the roads, and it just may become much more difficult to manage your lifestyle the way you've known it, because the land is going to be changed. The use of that land is going to be changed.